another Sunday, and you are here with us on Your Space, a show that allows you, the young people, to express yourself and express your views. And I am here, once again, your host, Hannah. And I'm super excited to be here, sharing the platform with amazing, amazing people. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves so that you get to know them a little bit more, and they can also tell us how their week has been. Hello to the lady at the extreme end. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. My name is Monica Achayo. I have had an amazing week. Thank you so much for having me.
We've missed you here on Your Space.
I miss you guys too.
Yes, to the gentleman.
Right, thank you. My name is Oremo Dwe, a very proud son of Dokolo district in Lango, and I'm very pleasured to be here at UBC in this particular program, Your Space, for the first time. Very, very honored and exceedingly humbled to be sitting next to Dr. Patricia here. It's a great pleasure.
Hello, good evening, viewers. I am Patricia Achano Kiria, Deputy Inspector General of Government, and I'm happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pano, for honoring my invitation. Today we're going to be talking about raising humanity in a corrupt world. How are we able to navigate this ethical maze? Maybe I want us to first start by either agreeing or disagreeing with the fact that there is corruption in the country currently. Oremo, is there corruption in Uganda or not?
You know, the question of corruption in Uganda, I think even an infant, a baby born today, can see the smell of corruption in our country. We have a lot of tendencies of corruption stretching from public service, stretching far to local governments at district levels, but also in the private sector. And corruption actually goes beyond government, like many people assume. Even on the streets, as people are walking, there is corruption. So we really have a lot of corruption in our country. But I have hope. I believe in Afro-optimism. I have a great hope that with the great works, the IGG and the different teams that have been put across to curb corruption, perhaps one day we shall live in a fair country.
But it does have some effects, right, Monica?
Corruption. Well, yeah, corruption does have effects. I mean, how would I even start? Every person who lives in this world, not even Ugandan maybe, has faced the effects of corruption because it has a way of working its way to you,
even when you don't want it.
Even when you don't want it in your private space. Sometimes these days things are getting crazy in business, in church, everywhere. There are aspects of this particular thing. So yes, it exists. Yes, it has negative effects, and yes, it has its way of finding itself to you. So corruption is not a myth. It is in this country.
Yes, Dr. Patricia, what is your say on that?
Corruption, as someone who has been involved in fighting corruption and who is still involved in doing so, I think corruption still exists in this country. And I would like to make reference to the kind of cases we are handling. We see a trend of corruption, and we have done research and we have seen the cost of corruption to this country, and we know that the country loses close to 10 trillion annually to corruption.
Trillion.
And that money would have been used for doing very many other things to benefit the citizens of this country in terms of service delivery, in terms of improving the socio-economic welfare of the people, the infrastructure, and so on. So corruption still does exist, but like Monica has said, there is a lot we can do in order to fight corruption, especially like now by involving the youth, by demystifying the national values and strategizing ourselves on how we can improve the war against corruption and be able to deal with the problem and wipe it out, reduce it or wipe it out completely. But the truth is corruption still does exist in this country, but there is a lot we can do together to ensure that we actually get to fight it by coming up with those different strategies we'll be discussing in the conversation.
Yes, and one of the things about Your Space is that we always come back to the conversation from the actual roots. So one of the things that definitely plays a part in each one of us when it comes to corruption, it is humanity. how do we as a society start to raise our children with humanity, with that sense of consciousness in order to fight corruption when we get into those different places of power? Maybe let's start by defining what humanity is. Dr. Patricia, how do you describe humanity? And how does it correlate with corruption?
Humanity is the person who is born as a human being, equal in dignity, with entitlements, with rights, with the ability to enjoy the services of the country. How is it related to corruption? This human being, if he is not taken very good care of, if he is not respected, if he is not provided with the social services, like the right to food, the right to health, the right to a clean and healthy environment, and so on, this human being begins to struggle to fit. And when these services are not offered, then the human being will begin compromising and getting to indulge in acts of corruption in order to get access to these services. So it starts from the foundation. How is this person born, in what environment, and how is this person raised? So in order to deal with the problem of corruption, we need to think about these values. If we can inculcate these values in our children right from the time they are born. Someone gave a description of even a baby grows knowing what corruption is.
Yeah. What is right?
That is why when the baby is breastfeeding, his hand is on another breast too. He's sucking breast one, but the hand is on breast two, to guard selfishly and say, well, if this one is empty, then I'll take the other one also. So we are talking about corruption now, but it is something that is like a cancer eating away this country. But we need to tackle it from the foundation. If we tackle it from the foundation, by extending this conversation far, I think we can come up with real workable solutions whereby children begin to learn about it right from their homes, from the families, and then even when they get into different spaces in school and elsewhere in institutions and later on working, they know exactly what their responsibilities are and their role in fighting corruption in this country. Thank you very much.
What about you, Monica? How do the two correlate? Or first of all, do you even agree that maybe humanity could be the root cause?
Yeah, I agree. You see, okay, you had asked a question earlier with regards to how can we raise children, nurture humanity into this whole thing, and I do agree that humanity has a connection to this whole thing, and the degradation of humanity is now the side effects of degradation of humanity, which, to help someone understand, if you've been following the show, is a breakdown in the values, the 10 values we've been having a conversation on, which naturally gives birth to corruption and all the effects therein. Reason being, you see, children mimic. It's naturally a thing in them. They see what they see daddy do is what they do. What they see mommy do is what they do. Sometimes we are uncautious, so they pick up our speeches. They pick up what we're doing. Like when we lie on phone, when we act there is this thing called sarcasm. Yes. Sarcasm must have a thin. There is a thin line between sarcasm and lying. All right, just because you said it in a funny way doesn't mean that the baby will get it and pick it, right? So basically, if we are to sort corruption, we also have to check our humanity. And if we are checking our humanity, we have to go back to our individual selves and see how we live our day-to-day lives. And because children view us and they mimic what we do, they mimic what we say, and they are going to go into the outside spaces with that kind of mentality, right? And that's now you start getting shocked at your teenager who is 13, and yet these are things that you could have corrected at a young age, not by beating or talking, but simply by behaving and acting right. So basically.
Well, Oremo, one of the reasons why we were so eager to host you on the panel today is because I know that you have experienced, you've been a victim of unfair treatment. Yes. I don't want to say, can I say corruption or unfair?
It is.
It is corruption.
It's an everyday thing in this nation.
So we are interested in finding out what your experience has been and how have you been able to navigate through that, with your humanity.
You know, for me, I'm a very, very attentive son of this country, and every time I'm moving on the streets of this country, anywhere, any direction I'm following, I see a lot of things happening and, you know, get left with a lot of questions that perhaps as a country we need to start bringing on the table and answer. Our country is so rotten that we have made abnormalities become normal in the faces of people who are growing up, in the faces of elders, and people are becoming confident to commit crimes, corruption crimes, broad daylight. Just like you've said, you've gone through an experience, it is broad day knowledge that recently, when I ran for Guild Presidency at Makerere, I was simply butchered because of the aspect of corruption. And later, they even come to talk about it, that we were given this amount of money, you won your election, you were stolen. So, but you realize that that is just a sect of the greater problem we're having in this country. You find aspects like meritocracy being sent to the rubbish pit, aspects like honesty being slaughtered basically because of greed and selfishness that we have around the people in this country. When you are growing up with your child, and okay, doctor here, she's a very reputable woman, and that is something that everyone knows. She's moving with her daughter in a car, perhaps going to the countryside for festivities. She meets 3 checkpoints, and she has navigated all of them with a car that is faulty. You ask yourself, how has she navigated?
I'm sorry.
Are you getting the point? She has navigated a
I
checkpoint.
don't usually do that.
No, like, I'm bringing it as an example.
example.
We're saying Dr. Patricia is going, let's say, to the countryside. She has met a checkpoint in Bale. She has navigated it. She got one in Kumi. She has navigated it. She got one in Soroti. She has navigated it. She is there with a young girl of people in her car. But she of course, she's going to go through those checkpoints with something giving to the people who should be, you know, parking our car somewhere, because it's not worth being on the road. And so tomorrow, it's going to be a great challenge to the child who is seeing what the mother is doing. In most cases, children actually look at their parents as role models. So this is a recurrence of an insurgency that we are going through. Fighting corruption is going to be a big, big trouble for us if we don't have people who can restrain themselves and train the country from a broader perspective. Because if I grew up seeing my dad sorting out, and the dad says, I know how to handle those people, tomorrow I'm going to do the same thing. It takes a lot for a child to deviate from what the parents are doing. And when you grow up seeing such a thing happening wherever you are, chances are very high that 80% you are going to be close to, you know, to what your parent does. Actually, you can even be more experienced because you saw it at a young age.
So
You were trained.
trained.
You have been nurtured in gangster dealings. And so it becomes a big problem. And I've seen corruption in this country. In the district where I come from, if you want a job in the district service commission invites you and they do for you this, and they ask you, how many can you afford? Do you know this? These are cows. How many can you afford? The language. You get it? The language.
How many do you have?
And Dokolo, where I come from, is not different from Isinjiro district. It's not different from Palisa. It's not different from Kabera Maido. All these people have the same problem. You get it?
Wow.
Well, this is interesting. Let's take a break. We're going to be right back after the break. Welcome back from that mini break. You are still here on your space with your host, Hannah Arinati. We're still dissecting raising humanity in a corrupt world, something that we do see each and every day. We just finished listening to OO share a couple of experiences, and just in the break, some of us were asking ourselves, is this really what is happening? And Dr. Patricia, you just told us that this is something that your office has dealt with.
The example he gave is really touching, and this is what children watch their parents do. Even the discipline of having to use the right lane or overtake, or you know, the way you conduct yourself, like Monica says, children imitate what we do. If I'm going to keep paying a bribe every checkpoint, I'm paying a bribe and getting my way off, then my child who is watching me will also do exactly that. That is why I'm saying it's a problem we need to tackle from its roots. It's something which is so serious And if we are supposed to demonstrate leadership by example, we need to start it right from home, right from families. And the art of leading people and making good decisions normally is based on a refined set of values like fairness, like accountability, trust, honesty, respect, and so on. If you are not accountable, even to the child, your own child who is around, who is watching you and checking out every move, then what kind of leader are you going to make? Now, these values basically form the core foundation of the ethical leadership. When we talk about ethical leadership, it is only ethical leadership that can help us deal with corruption in this country as it is today. And you know, ethics is that way of standing out, first of all, by understanding what is right from what is wrong, and being able to go by what is right in order to build on those moral values and principles. And more specifically, when it comes to issues to do with decision making, a leader must be able to be dynamic and be able to navigate through the challenges we're sharing here. How can you navigate through those challenges? How can you make what is wrong right? If the child has seen you do that, can you go back and correct? Can you repent, reflect on those wrong acts you have done and be able to start again on a new slate? Otherwise, we will end up lamenting, like Oo has said. What is it that we are bringing on the table that can improve and we come out with the quality of leaders? Today, it's very hard to get leaders who have integrity, who are ethical, just because everybody else is compromising. Everybody else has gone with what is abnormal has become normal, like he has said. How can we reverse the situation and make what is the normal be normal? This calls for distinctiveness. This calls for being exemplary. This calls for sticking to the values and principles. And this calls for preaching these values and principles so that we can have some responsible citizens who are able to uphold these values and be leaders of integrity. It's very unfortunate what Oo went through in the university during elections, but that happens even in national elections, where some opponents actually want to kill the others, where they're backstabbing the others, where they're treading on lies, where they're deceiving members in the constituencies, giving them salt. And a hungry human being, Hannah, will not think beyond the next meal.
Yes,
so if you're offering
now
some money, they will just receive it and then forget all about the leadership. And the leader goes away laughing. He goes to represent them in parliament. But what representation do we see? Some of those leaders we have seen that they are basically not even representing the people from the constituencies. They are there on their own floric. But if we want quality leaders in this country, what we need to begin talking about is ethical leadership, the ethical values and principles and norms, so that we can be able to put aside occurrences like corruption and lead our country to steady progress and development.
Maybe I'll take this to Monica. Monica, so how do you think we can create this culture of accountability, of transparency in our communities right now, especially with young people? How do you think we could do that?
Wow, that's an interesting question, because okay, firstly, the community we are living in now and the mindset that is going around these days is sort of, people are very entitled. People are very, you don't tell me what to do kind of mindset oriented. So, because when you were asking, the first thing that dropped to my mind was like, why don't we go legal? Let's put the, if you do this, you get this. But then I realized court does a very good job, but the particular, like, it has places it can't really reach, like in your room, in your classroom, and in those other places that court can't reach. What do you do there? So I think it comes back to you as an individual, in as much as also leadership, right? If you are a leader and you happen, I keep telling people, when you view the way Dr. Patricia runs her life and the way she does certain things, you understand that it is possible to be that kind of leader, even if you are the only one in your space believing for that particular thing, because there are people watching out and there are people looking up to you, right? Now there are things and decisions and spaces I will never go, simply because of the way she has conducted her life,
like
and the way I have seen it.
Like which one?
Taking bribes. I have seen she can't do that. And it's not me sitting from this side and watching from afar and judging. From the person I've seen on TV, she can't. I have really interacted with her as an individual. I've interacted with Joel as an individual. So you understand, I've interacted with you as an individual. He has spoken about the things that, you know, touch him as a person. So you realize that there are people in the community with mindsets that say, let us end corruption now. So if you stick to your desires and also to your aspects of let us end corruption now, such platforms will unite you, and soon it will be a bigger and broader community. As long as we keep singing this particular song, there are people who are bound to be drawn by the vision, and together we can make a change. So I think the most important thing is you as an individual, don't give up the fight about corruption, because if you give up, then you're letting down 1,000 other people who would have stood up because you spoke.
Do you agree with that, Oremo? Do you agree with what she just said?
You know, the question of tackling corruption in this country is also another broad conversation of its own. Just like she's saying that you can choose to be an independent person and say, we need a country that is clean, that is economically hygienic. But I just want to give you a scenario. Let's say you, for example, work in Makerere University Senate, and a deal comes, you are in the middle of 7 crooks, very corrupt people, but you're the only person who is thinking rightly, and you're thinking about the plight of a young boy somewhere in Palisa district who should come and access services at Makerere University. But you are in the chain of corrupt people. They are going to threaten you. They are going to tell you are going to lose this job. So you find that it's always a game of numbers. It's always a game of numbers. If you find in the system where you're working, you know, close to 70% of the people are corrupt, it becomes very hard for you to actually, you know, stand to the standards. And that's why our country is sinking each and every day. Because everywhere you're going to find corrupt people. A resource has been sent to, you know, rehabilitate a hospital, but there are goons in the system who want to eat the money. There are few good people who cannot outnumber the what? The people who are ill. You find that the money will have to be eaten. And the person will either receive the money and keep quiet, but you cannot refuse. Most cases, you can't refuse that. For me, I'm not going to take that money. You're going to see people fighting you from the top management, and soon or later you'll see yourself out of the system, and that is the biggest fear of an African man. In Africa, if you're not employed, then that is total frustration.
Definitely.
I believe as a country, we actually need to treat our problem from the budding level. The question of corruption in Uganda, you know, going to arrest people, going to hang like some countries do. In some countries, they hang corrupt people. When they get you stealing government resources, you are hanged. I believe we need to be stringent on dealing with people we have. You see, when you adduce evidence, like at IGG, you adduce evidence that, has stolen this amount of money. He must face justice. They must be put to book. And then the other thing is government should get back to the starting point. Because you see, in this country, for example, now our assistant IG here, perhaps, you know, she's having a high-ranking position in the country, and where she comes from, there could be a lot of people looking at her. Are you getting? Because as a country, we have resources. We have a problem that our people cannot access good services. That today you have a minister in one village, the whole sub-county, the whole district is looking at that person. The minister is earning maybe 30 million shillings. You have to attend to everyone. You find someone has been dragged to corruption. In the Scandinavian countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland, such countries, you find that a minister is going to the same hospital with the wananchi. A minister's child.
Using a bus.
Yes, a minister's child is going to the same school with my child. Is using a bus to go to work. A prime minister is riding a bicycle. So you find that in such a country, you're going to find few cases of corruption because people are not fighting to access our Nakasero hospital in Uganda here. So a minister will want the mother to his wife to go to Nakasero. His child has to go to Nakasero. His son has to go and study in Canada. So he has to keep looting all the money he sees around him.
I'm sorry.
So that
Now
he can
I'm going to put a halt to this conversation because we're running out of time. We're going to continue this conversation next week on Sunday. Once again, this is your space with your host, Hannah Arinaitu. Thank you so much, panel, for joining me today. See you next Sunday for this conversation.